Guys and gals, we are officially midway through 2018. This goddamn 6 months are done, and so this is going to be my top 10 films of 2018 so far. Now I have to point out the movies that I haven't seen yet, and it sucks because there were movies I really wanted to see before making this list, but they weren't released in my area, so I'll probably never get to see them. Look, by the time my top 10 of the overall year and December comes out, I will catch up on everything. I'm not gonna miss a movie for that. But for the midway one, there's some movies that I just couldn't get around to because they're too limited and you gotta live in LA or New York. So the movies I have not seen that will not make this list are A24's First Reformed. I also did not get to see the documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor about Mr. Rogers. That crushes me, but these two movies just weren't released in my area and they won't be anytime soon. I also did not get to see the masterpiece that was Pacific Rim Uprising. I'm sure that would have made my list. And I didn't see any comedies, really. Didn't see Game Night, didn't see that one with John Cena, Blockers, and I didn't see Ocean's 8 and Tag. Those movies won't be on my list. Now getting to my list, here are some honorable mentions I'm going to run through. Revenge, Netflix's The Ritual, Upgrade, Isle of Dogs, Deadpool 2, The Strangers Prey at Night, and Tomb Raider. Two I want to talk about in particular are The Strangers Prey at Night. That almost made my top 10, and this is a movie that a lot of people, it got like bad reviews. A lot of people didn't like, and people who did like it only liked one scene. And to me, The Strangers Prey at Night is an 80s slasher movie released in modern day, and if it came out in the 80s, it would have been beloved. Because if you release Friday the 13th instead of back then in 1980 whatever it was, if you release it now, it'll get eaten alive by critics. People would hate it, but it worked back then because it was cheesy, it was fun, it was a slasher movie, and it worked. And that's what The Strangers Prey at Night was, but it was unfortunately released modern day where people are all jaded from these types of horror movies. I thought Strangers Prey at Night was a great slasher film. It captured everything that felt like the 80s slasher horrors we used to watch. Also, Tomb Raider. Barely missed out on my list. Didn't love this movie, but I'm a huge fan of the Tomb Raider games, especially the 2013 and 2015 Rise of the Tomb Raider. And this movie I think is the best video game movie ever made, which isn't saying much because there's never been a single good video game movie. I think this was the first ever decent one, and it was decent. Alicia Vikander was a great Lara Croft, and it was a decently entertaining video game movie that felt a lot like the 2013 game, and I liked it, and I wish more people saw it so we get a sequel on Rise of the Tomb Raider, which was a better game, and get that adapted to the movies, but nobody watched it. Alright, number 10 on my list is Sicario Soldado, or what's it called? Day of the Soldado. Dumb title. Sicario Day of the Soldado. I'm in the minority in which I think this film is better than the original. I don't love the original like many people. This film, it is lacking in the direction and the cinematography of Villeneuve and Deakins, but the story I thought was much better. The script written again by Taylor Sheridan, and it follows Benicio this time the entire way through, and Josh Brolin, the superior characters, and their lead in the original one. And I just thought it's a Western film, and it's a war film, and it's Mexican drug cartel, and I just thought it was fantastic. Number 9 on my list is Black Panther. Black Panther was very much a live-action Lion King. It had, for me, the best things about this movie was the villain Killmonger, who actually ended up being my favorite MCU villain until Thanos came along. But I really liked him. I loved the nation of Wakanda. The third act for the movie kind of falls apart and gets a little dull, but everything up to that point I was loving. I was loving the rituals of Wakanda and all the rules we learn, and the fights and the combat system to take the spot of King. And Black Panther, it's not one of my favorite MCU movies, but it's another solid one, and all the characters, especially the supporting cast, really shined in it, and it was just an entertaining Marvel movie. Number 8 is Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One. Now this movie is a little forgettable, and I've forgotten a lot of it already, but it was the first Spielberg film in like 20 or something years that actually felt like a Spielberg film, that actually felt like it had magic in it and heart, and wasn't just a cold, dull film like Bridge of Spies or The Post. It had adventure in it, and it had fun and it was entertaining, and we got to visit The Shining, one of my favorite films of all time. You got to go into the movie, which just, you already earned a spot on my list just when they did that. Number 7 on my list is Unsane, the Steven Soderbergh film nobody saw. This film blew my mind because it was shot entirely on an iPhone, which I just love, because I always have had the mind that you don't need fancy equipment and all this stuff. He took an iPhone and he filmed an entire film. I used to make these YouTube videos on my cell phone. People are like, oh, well, I don't have the equipment that the, big YouTubers have. Well, this guy just grabbed a phone and he made a movie. So nobody needs this fancy equipment. You can just do whatever you want. Besides the camera and the technical stuff, the movie itself was just a great psychological thriller, one of the best I've seen in a long time, with a great performance by Claire Foy, who I think she could be nominated for an Oscar if anybody saw this movie, but they didn't, so she won't. Number 6 on my list is Solo, a Star Wars story. You can hit the dislike button now. I actually like Solo, Star Wars story a lot more than I thought I would. I was one of the people, from the moment it was announced, I was like, please cancel this movie. I hated the idea of it, and I still don't know if it ever needed to exist, but for what it was a fun space adventure movie. I know people use the word fun a lot to but that's all it was. It wasn't really meaty. It didn't really have a lot of depth or any memorable moments or anything you're gonna take out of it. It's just, you watch it. It was fun. I thought Alden Ehrenreich did a great job, even a better job at capturing Han than Donald Glover did as Lando, but they were both really good, and the movie was just enjoyable, and it had some cool scenes in it, and it had that ending with an awesome character that I won't spoil, but Solo. Number 5 on my list is A Quiet Place. John Krasinski, Jim from The Office. I love The Office, one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and now he made a horror movie that was like a Cloverfield movie, and you had these aliens, and I went in this movie completely blind. I thought it was a movie about people breaking into a house, but then it turns out it's about aliens breaking into this house, and it was a movie that was completely silent. How rarely does that happen nowadays? It is very much the Get Out of 2018, and I just loved it. The scene where the babies in the little underwater thing and the alien goes underwater, it's just fantastic. People didn't like the ending, and neither did I. Number 4 on my list is Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2 I just think is a lovely movie. I hadn't seen a Pixar film in theaters since the original Incredibles, and then I watched Incredibles 2, and I don't know if I could say it's better than the original, but I think you can have the discussion. I still don't know which I like more, and it's just mind-blowing that they made a sequel that is that good and that enjoyable, and it just it perfectly works for kids, it works for adults, people have the nostalgia for it, new people being introduced to it, and surprisingly this time around, the highlights of the movie were the baby Jack and then Violet's boy troubles, which you made a superhero film, and the superhero stuff wasn't even the best parts of the film. It was the stay-at-home dad stuff and the girl trying to get a date. Number 3 on my list is a movie that I've made 3 videos on already. It is Hereditary. Hereditary, I believe it is A24. Hereditary is just one of the best horror films. I don't know if I'll say of all time yet, but it is just a masterful made horror film by Ari Aster. It is something that I've made over 30 minutes, over 30 minutes of videos just speculating and analyzing on, and it's reminiscent of films like The Exorcist. It's reminiscent very much of the Paranormal Activity first 3 films, but done better, even though those films are still really good. The first 3, it's a great movie, and Hereditary. Alright, now you haven't heard it yet, so yes, my number 1 choice is going to be very boring, and then it's going to make you hit the dislike button, but first, my number 2 choice is Thoroughbreds. Thoroughbreds stars one of my favorite actresses, Anya Taylor-Joy. I've loved her ever since she was in one of my favorite films of all time, The Witch, and Thoroughbreds, it reminded me of American Psycho. It is just about these psychotic girls who one of them wants to murder their dad and the other one wants to help, and it is just hilarious. It's Anton Yelchin's final performance, and he is amazing in it. It's Olivia Cooke, Anya Taylor-Joy, and it is just like a sick, twisted, super dark comedy, and it has an amazing score, and it focuses on these characters and delves really much into their psyches, and it's something you need to watch twice, and it gets even better, and it is just It's one of the best dark comedies I've seen in many, many years. I loved every bit of Thoroughbreds, and it was my favorite film of the year for a very long time until I saw my number one film. Yes, here's my boring choice, but it's Avengers Infinity War. I was never a big, huge Marvel fan. This year I rewatched all the MCU movies leading up to Infinity War. That was my first time seeing any of them since the theater, and I started to become an MCU fan, and then I saw Infinity War, and I finally got what all the Marvel hype was about. Infinity War was like Return of the King for superhero movies. I don't think it's like a masterpiece or like an all-time great superhero movie, but it made me realize the MCU is a TV series. It's not really a movie series, and some episodes are different than the others, and a lot of them are very different, but it was all this one story that they were telling for 10 years, and then it led to this, which was a culmination of everything, and it was really a spectacle, and it was an event, and it's the return of the king of superhero movies, and I just thought Infinity War was just great, and it had an ending that I love. We can talk spoilers now. I love that it ended with all our heroes dying. I wanted to hear kids in the theaters crying, and then the bad guy just sitting in a cabin just looking off into the sunset, knowing that he slaughtered half of the universe. That's what I wanted. I don't want to see beams in the sky and the heroes win and they drop a quip and the bad guy gets hauled off or whatever, and it's just like, oh, I'll get you next time. It's like, no, the villain killed everybody. Everybody's dead. We watched Peter Parker disintegrate and cry as he died, and Thanos is sitting on a cabin in the woods just looking off, and it's just beautiful. And a bunch of our favorite characters died. Some of them will stay dead forever. Some of them will come back. Gamora got thrown off a cliff, and I don't think she's coming back. And that is, can you imagine Guardians of the Galaxy 3 where Star-Lord doesn't have Gamora? Thanos took his own daughter and he threw her off a cliff and he cried during it. That happened in a comic book movie. Infinity War made me a fan of the MCU. It really won me over, and it is a movie I saw 3 times in theaters. It's the one, even though I love Thoroughbreds so much, I kept on thinking about Infinity War. It's probably going to be the first time since Guardians of the Galaxy that a Marvel movie ends up in my top 10 at the end of the year. I think it's going to be tough for many movies to beat Infinity War. I love the movie, and that's my top 10 movies of the first half of 2018. I'm going to go to sleep because I got to be up in 4 hours to work a 10-hour shift. It's just crazy. And I think I'm going to watch Parks and Rec episode before I go to sleep. See, the thing, I don't want to give spoilers. Okay, goodbye. Check out all that garbage.